All right. Thank you, David. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Chris Gearig, and I'm a faculty at KVCC in the CIS department. And I've actually been using Canvas for probably about 3 years. And I was also one of the people that piloted for KVCC. I had for this last semester, when all of a sudden we were thrown online, I actually had one of my pilot courses running inside of Canvas. So I experimented with how am I going to now take a face-to-face class that I always gave a paper and pencil test to for their final exam, and put it into Canvas. And then I wanted it to be in this lockdown browser. So I reached out to Molly and David. They shared some videos with me, and then I was able to come up with a exam that I was pretty excited with. It worked pretty well. So I told them I could share that with everybody, and then we could walk through on how to make one of these exams if you want to, and I can just show you how to also put it underneath the lockdown browser with a Respondus, because it actually worked very well. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And if you want to follow along, you're more than welcome to follow along as well as we go through. So right now what I have is, you should just be seeing my my Valley page, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up Canvas. And when I first built this course, and I would recommend this highly, that you start with a actual blank course, because you want to do a lot of the testing in that blank course, and then it's very easy to actually go in and transfer it from that blank course over into your live course on there for it. So that would be one of the things that I would definitely recommend. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you the actual test that I made and gave to my students. And I'll show you two things. I'll show you the paper copy that I would give out to them, and then I'll show you how I turned it into the test online for that as well for it. So the paper copy that I have out here, let's see if you guys can see. Here it is. So hopefully you should see, this is just a Word document. This is for a CIS course, and I'm asking the students, they had to do some math, is basically what this was. And so I gave them the problem, the scenario on here, where they had to do a variable length subnet mask using an IP version 4 addressing scheme that'll accommodate up to 4 networks or subnets. So I give them all this, and then they basically have to do some simple math to figure it out. So I tell them, you know, the scenarios of how they're going to fill it in, and then they usually would write in their answers for me. And again, this was something I did in my course. It was paper and pencil, and I could see if the students were able to understand the concepts. Then I had like a table where they would fill in for each of the different 4 networks that I asked them to create for me. And you don't have to worry about some of the language. I realize some of you might not be CIS or IT people. You might not understand what it is, but I was asking them for what was called a subnet, a CIDR, subnet mask, the usable IP address, and the broadcast. And then I even give them the scenario of what a network looks like, and they had to then answer some questions based off of this network. And notice this table. So this was my dilemma. Like, I have this table, and I need them to fill it in, because part 2 of their exam was based on what their answers were from this table. So, you know, I was just struggling with, what do I do here? So this was what I gave to them as the paper and pencil, and I'll show you now what I got for the quiz. So hopefully you guys are back seeing my Canvas on here. So I came up with this CIS 253 final.
I'm seeing Canvas.
You're not?
No, I'm still seeing your Word document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, same, Chris.
All right, let's go over here. Let's just go to my whole screen. How we go? There we go.
Perfect.
All right, thanks you guys. So I'm going to first show you what it looked like to the students, and then I'm going to walk you through and show you what it did. So what I found out for in here is I made this a quiz, and from the quiz, I used what was called a fill in multiple blanks, okay, because they needed to type in these answers for me out there. So I'm going to choose preview. So what I came up with is, from my Word document, I just did a copy and paste of all my text messages in here. And then where I needed them to fill in some information, I had these fill in the blanks, and that's where the students are going to, type in some information, on here. So I'm just going to type in some of the information and these are numbers that they would be responding with that we had out there as well for it. So the next part was that second table, the table that I showed you where I asked about each of the individual networks. So I put them all into individual questions. So this one says, answer the following questions about the staff network or staff LAN. And each of these questions, basically all we're going to have the same answer. So I basically, once I had one question done with the fill in the blanks, I actually was able to copy it and then just be able to use it for this question. I just changed the wording to sales on this next question. Again, these are all the same questions that we have out there. And then I did that for the next 4 so that I didn't have to retype or recreate anything. So that's what's one of the things that was nice is once I had these questions done, I was able to duplicate them and only change a few of the text words in there because the rest of these questions did not change. They just were to a different network on there. So there's the last one that I had copied over. Now, this last one, this is where I spent a little bit of time on, but I needed to show that network design. So this was just a picture I copied and pasted. I used Snippet, I believe, took it out of my paper copy and pasted it right in here. And then I added the questions. And then here was my table. I actually did just put in a table, and then I added all these fill in the blanks that they had to answer. Now, I took out some of the extra text because if you might have remembered from my original Word document, I had a lot more words in there, but that was for, I was giving them the answers to their second part, which was IP version 6 stuff that they didn't have to perform any of these calculations for me. So I only put in here to make it a little bit more cleaner and not to confuse them anymore. I only listed what it was that I actually was asking them to input for me on there. So this is what the students saw, and it really was a success. The students, they didn't have any struggles with it, and when it came back to me, it was really a nice a quiz that we had out there. Any questions so far? So
how sensitive is the, well, first question, are you then manually grading this or is the system grading? And if the system's grading, how sensitive is this?
yeah, that's a great question, Sherry. So it depends on how well you set it up. So when you set it up, and I'll go in and I'll show you that, and you have multiple answers, and it just depends on, how well you put in the answers to accept it. Now, the test that I was doing here, obviously was a lot of numbers on there. So let me show you what that looked like. So this is what it looked like on here. I gave the instructions. I told them that they had to use the lockdown respondents, the browser for that. And then here are the questions that I did out here. So we'll look at the first question. Notice up here I did fill in multiple blanks. And the way that this works for the multiple blanks, and this was a learning curve for me because I didn't know at first, I just copied and pasted all of my text from the Word document that I had on here. And then when you want the little blanks to show up, you put them in between these square brackets. Mm-hmm. So for this question, I couldn't use duplicate names on here. So I couldn't say, what is the subnet? I couldn't use in between the bracket, the word subnet for every one of the lines. I had to use a different word for each of them so that I could identify when they went down and looked at them. So on this question, it said, what is the subnet and CIDR that you assign to the IT network? So then I just made the blank. I called it IT. This was my reference. The next one I called sales. The next one I called staff. Now down here, this is where you say this is what the possible answers could be. So under IT, I would accept this is the IP address followed by the /27. But I would also accept the IP address followed by what was called a subnet mask. Even though I truly didn't ask them for a subnet mask, I would give them credit if they actually wrote that out. Well, I had my first student take the test, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, he's getting everything wrong. Well, what I went and looked at his answers. He typed it in, but didn't put spaces like I did between mine. So talk about that sensitivity.
Mhm.
You just have to think about what could the possible answers be. So after my first student took it, I did go back in and make those changes. And then I really didn't have to go in and correct much, because as long as you can put in your possible answers. Now, obviously, if there's some type of word answers that that you would put in, that's a little bit different, because you have to take into consideration students misspelling things. Are you going to accept that? If this is a spelling test, then this works out great, right? Because you're expecting the student to spell it, but then think about uppercase, lowercase, all caps, those are all the considerations. So on here, I had 4 fill in the blanks. So I come up here and I go, okay, here's my IT. Here's the answer that I want for IT. Drop down. Here's my one for sales. So here were the possible answers for sales. Staff. And then my guest network. So it really was not, I did a lot of copying and pasting from my Word document that I already had out there. And then all I did was add it in where I wanted the actual blank to actually show up for the students. And when I first did this, I literally did put it all up here, and where it said sales, I had brackets around it. And then I read, and then of course I previewed it, went, oh, the students are, this doesn't make any sense. It says the blank department requires this, the blank. So then I realized my mistake, that wherever I put those brackets was where the blank would show up. So that's when I redid all this and then just put in my brackets where I wanted the actual blank line of where they were going to actually type in show up.
Chris,
Yeah.
if there's a math value in there, can you assign a tolerance to it?
I believe you could. I didn't get into that part, Tom. So I would believe that you would be able to. But that's definitely something we can take a look at.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Okay. So that was, I wanted to show you the other, so these questions, like I said, once I had a question created out here, then I was able to just copy and paste that question and reuse it, because the only thing that changed was the wording up here. So I was able to go in and just copy and paste those questions on there, and made it a lot easier as I came in here. So this was my big one. I did finagle with this one a little bit. This was where I came in and put the image on here. And I do know when you're working with Canvas, to make sure that it does work properly, you do want to actually insert your image. So when you do go out and do the snippet like I did, you can actually save that as an image, and then you can actually just bring it in this way. You also have an embed image as well that you can bring in for that. And then, like I said, all I did for here was I created a table. So the tricky part on this one, and it really was for me, was I had to come up with all of these fill in the blank names so that I could understand it. So I did it off of the interfaces, because every interface was going to be different. And so for the interfaces, I needed them to tell me the IP address and the subnet mask. And then, for some of the other items, like for the PCs, I needed the default gateway. So I just came up with a little naming convention, and that really is just for you. Your students do not see it, but it's definitely something you have to understand, because I'll show you when you come down here, This is where you show all your possible answers. Okay, so I had a blank called how many networks there were, and I accepted either 6 or 5. Any other answer is not acceptable, and that's based off of when they looked at the networks. But this is my long list that I had to actually go through. So this is where I had some time that I had to put in because I had to make sure that I was putting in the correct IP address for each one of them. But on these, there was only one possible answer. So this worked out perfect because there was no any other possible answer. For each one of these, as I go through them, they could only put in one answer and it was the right answer. So that's why that worked out so nicely for me on there for it. Okay. All right.
Was there a drag and drop type thing that you could, since some of these answers are used multiple times, was there a drag and drop feature, or this is the first I've even looked at anything in Canvas, or would you recommend this instead?
When I started building this, when I would go to the answer field, it would actually show up previous answers I had put in. So there is an option for you to go pick and choose, but it does fill up. So a lot of times what I did is I just had my answer sheet up and I could just copy and paste stuff over from my answer sheet onto that. But just double checking your numbers. I did find that I did do a typo on one of my IP addresses, and I transposed 2 of the numbers, but that was quickly found when my first student went through and I looked at his answers and then I looked at mine and I went in and made that correction. So, that would be the one thing that I would recommend is just make sure that you go through and take it yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And then make sure it's the outcome that you actually wanted to have that out there.
So this allows for editing. I've struggled in Moodle because apparently, and once you pass a certain point, if there's a mistake in there, I have yet to figure out how to fix it. Even if no students have tried to take it yet, I still struggle with being able to edit my own stupidity.
Oh, no. And that's what I liked about Canvas is I was able to go in here and edit this. And of course it popped up warning messages and stuff for me. But all the students that took it after this one student, everybody else, it graded it. It took the changes just fine. So that worked out good for me.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So if you want, let's walk through. If you guys want to walk through, I can show you how to actually build one of these quizzes from scratch on there. And then how to link it to, because the other part that I did is I put it in the lockdown browser for that. And actually, for the lockdown browser, I just watched some of the videos that the Faculty Success Center has out there, and I was able to get through it pretty well. So if you want to follow along and try to make a quiz, feel free to go ahead and go through it and make up a quiz. But I'll just show you, how to make one of these fill in the blank quizzes. So if you are at a point where you're at a computer and you can actually go in and do that, you can go ahead and do that. So I usually will come over, and again, I'm on one of my blank courses. That's usually where I start at, is on my blank courses. And I come right down to quizzes underneath here. And then I'm just going to add in a new quiz. Now they have up here where you can choose your quiz engine. And I really have not had a lot of time to look at the new quizzes out there. I did start with one of those, and then I was struggling with it. So I just went back to the old classic ones because that's what I was used to. So for that. So the first page, this is where you're going to give your instructions to your students and how are you going to name this. So if this is for a course, then you can go in and you can give, whatever name you want to have for this course on there. And then I would always recommend that you give some type of instructions for the students, especially if you're going to be using the lockdown browser. Then you might want to let them know that, hey, you have to have the lockdown browser in order for this to actually work on there. So whatever instructions you want to give to them, are they allowed to use paper, calculators? Are they allowed to search? Since we are in this environment now where students are doing a lot of stuff from afar, you know, this is where you can come in and put any of your instructions or details, information that you want for the test or quiz that they're going to be taking out here. I leave it as a graded quiz. And then if you have your different assignments set up, you could go in and choose what category you want those to go into. So if you actually had a category assignment group called quizzes, it could go to that. This is where you could choose, should they be able to shuffle the questions that they have out there. And then since we've went into this working from home type class, I definitely do go in and put a time limit on my quizzes, because I definitely don't want my students to open it and let it sit open for, you know, so many hours, and where they're, you know, not sitting down doing it and closing it up. So depending on how many questions that you have out there, how long are you going to give for your quizzes? So I definitely do put the time limits on here. If you do want to allow multiple attempts, maybe you allow the students to take it once and then go back in for a better grade. You definitely can go in and set that up as well for it. And then you have the option to let students see the quiz responses, incorrect answers, if you want to. And I usually turn this on. I usually don't let them see that, especially for the one I was given, which was the final exam. And I don't let them see it until after the test or the quiz is actually, you know, closed out there for it. For the quiz, the question out there, the quiz is considered a test. The quiz option is when you do go out there, and that's the one that allows you to come up and create, whether it's a test or a quiz or even a homework, whatever you want to call it. But it does fall underneath a quiz for you to actually create this type of assignment out there for it. Notice that you can, for my last one, I did say show one question at a time on the screen because I don't want them looking ahead. That's an option. Again, it's all up to you for that. You can actually go in and require an access code. So maybe the students can't take it until they have that access code. When the testing center was available, then I would turn on the require an access code. You can either come up with your own access code that or put in your password out here, and then I would send that to the testing center with the students' names and say, these students are required to take this test. They have to do it by this date, and here's the passcode to unlock it, you know, for that on there. I've used this quite often too, is you can either assign it to everybody in your class, or you actually can do it by groups or individual people and then put on different due dates. So that's kind of a helpful option as well. So lots of different options. And again, this is just the first part of creating a quiz out there. And, you know, put on and inside of here, you actually can put pictures. You actually can put links to other files. If you have a link to a URL, you can do that as well. So lots of options for putting items in here. If I wanted to put in further instructions, a lot of times I will already upload my files so that they are actually out here for me. And then I can go in and choose to add that file if I want to in there. Oh, that was my final PNG. So you can go in and I would recommend that you do go in and actually put your files in first. You can choose to upload it right here while you're thinking about it, but it works a lot easier if you just go in and put it all at once, and then you go in and you can find them as well for it. All right. So this is where you actually start to go into your questions. So again, creating a quiz, you have the option to choose, and you could choose, every question could be a different type of question out there. You don't have to do them all fill in the blanks or all multiple choice or all true and false. Just like in Moodle, you have the option to add your new questions. So we're going to click on a new question. It comes up with the question up here. You can actually come in and change that if you want to. This is where you go in and you can choose what type of questions you have. So notice that there's some that say numerical answers, multiple drop downs, multiple answers. The one I was working with was fill in multiple blanks. That's the one that I showed you guys on what I was doing. So if this is a multiple fill in the blank, depending on, how many questions you can choose, how many points you want this question to be worth on there. So I had some of them because I had 5 multiple blanks. I made it a 5-point question, one for each of those that are out there. So then you would come in and you start putting in your text. And again, all I did was come out to my Word document and came up and I copied the text because I'm not a big typer, and I just pasted it in. Okay, and I just in case you didn't see, I do a Control V. I did the shortcut Control V on there. But that's just giving them some information about this problem. I still haven't added anything to them to fill in their blanks. So if I'm going to ask them to fill in the blanks, this is where I would come in and go, okay, I'm going to start asking them to give me some information. So I'm going to copy this. And if you want to number it, however you want to do it, you can. Now, when I want the blank to show up, this is where then you have to put in a square bracket, which is just above your enter key. You don't have to do a shift or anything. And now you need to give this field a name. And because I'm asking for information about the IT network, I'm just going to put IT as the name and end it with the square bracket. And I'm going to press enter. And then notice, here it is up here. And now it says show possible answers for IT. So this is where you would come in and you would put in those magic numbers. Now you can see somebody was asking questions. Do you always have to retype everything in? Notice that what I've typed in before is already here. And if those are the correct answers, then I could just go in and select those. And then you can add in multiple answers that you would accept in whatever format, keeping in mind that students might not put that space in. That was my fault. I didn't think that people would put the space in, but you just never know what the students are gonna do out there. So you would put in your multiple answers, and you could even keep adding more. So if you have more answers to add in, you could keep adding more answers as they go along that they have on there. And then as we come on here, we can go to the second question. I'm going to come back over here, come to my second question. This is going to be about the sales network. I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to paste. And again, I got to add in one of those square brackets. So now I added an additional field. So now when I come down here, I see IT and I see sales because those are my square brackets that I put up there. And again, you could come in here and put out, okay, what's your answers going to be for the sales network? So you would continue on for any of those that we have through there. And then once you're done, I usually try to say do the update the question just so that I know that it's saved, that it has out there for it. So that one was pretty simple, going in and just adding the multiple fill in the blanks. Again, I always started with something I already had on paper, and then I've just copied and pasted the stuff over. So I didn't have to do too much typing. But again, it's just a preference that you might have out there for it. Any questions on that?
No question, but I do have a comment. You don't have to memorize that you use the square brackets, because when you select a question type, it actually, as you're building your question before she saved it, it actually gives you an example of how you should type it. So if you forget that you have to use square brackets for your answer fields, you just look at the hints it gives you on the question type.
Yep, right up for the fill in the blanks up here. Yep, it'll tell you.
I'm sorry, when you initially showed us the picture of your question, and you actually had a chart that that the students had to fill in.
A table.
A table, thank you, a table the students had to fill in. I've struggled with that in Moodle. Is that much more simple here in Canvas? Because I actually couldn't get a pretty table like yours to land nicely in Moodle.
Okay, so let's take a look here. So this will be another fill in the multiple blanks. And, you know, I usually tell them to fill in the missing information on the table. And then I'm going to come up and I'm going to insert a table, however many rows that you want. Now, and so depending on what it is that you're going to have for your table and the information, you know, on here I had like, you know, router 1, router 2, router 3 information. Actually, I should move this. All right, so device, and then IP address, subnet mask, and default. Students know what I'm asking for, right? Because this is just a table, and I'm asking them to fill in. And then these are going to be the blanks. So on here, this is where I'm going to do the square bracket, and I'm just going to call this one router 1. And I'm going to put IP, so I know it's the IP address that I'm looking for router 1 on there. This one's going to be router 1, and this is going to be the subnet mask. So we'll abbreviate that. And this one will be router 1 for DG for default gateway. And then you would just start filling in. So this one will be router 2. Fill in the blank. This one will be router 3. Oops, wrong bracket. I'm kind of anal about my all capital and stuff like that. So as we go through, this one's going to be router 2. So that's really the big thing, is you making sure you understand what are you naming these fill in the blanks, so that you can find them when you go down to put in your answers.
Can you format those columns like you know how in Excel you can format so it's pretty? Is it a standard format? If you have 4 columns, that's the column you're going to get, or do you have the opportunity to format?
Well, they have up here to do an HTML editor, and so if you're talking about formatting, I did go in and I did resize all of mine, because obviously my device name didn't need to be this big, and I wanted more space for them to input their information. So you are able to go in and do, with all the formatting that they have up here, you can go in and choose, do you want things to be aligned, centered? You can choose the different formattings, the background color. So if you wanted to maybe have them look a different color, you could actually go in and do that as well.
How did you do could you demonstrate how you change the size of the columns, please? Sure.
If I can remember how I did it.
Sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking that. I'm like, I went in, I thought I just did a drag and drop, but I could be, oh, I know how I'm trying, now I think I remember I had to go in here and table do your cell or your row or your column properties. It must have been the cell properties. And I went in and just changed it this way. Did the width and the heights that way. So the width, I think I changed to, I think what I did is I first looked. I remember it did take me a little bit to find it, but it was underneath the table properties or cell properties. And it said that the width was 25%. And I think I went in and I changed it to like, you know, less 5%. I had to fool around with this, but once I found something, it went in and it changed it, and it was really nice. Maybe so. I'll have to look at that and see.
You've given me a head start to how to get there. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
I did go in and do that. David might be able to to go in and tell me. Let me see if this was what I did.
Chris, do you suppose we could, and I was building these tables during the winter semester and just trying to make do with the
There we go.
formatting there. Do you suppose we could build these tables in Word or in Excel and then somehow embed them? So once we get them looking really pretty in Word or Excel, either screenshot them there or import them into here?
Well, the only thing I'm not sure about, I mean, I haven't tried that, but yeah, you just would have to make sure you use the brackets, because these once you embed the picture, it's not going to recognize that you typed in a bracket, and that's how you
Oh.
get these possible
yeah.
answers.
Okay. Yeah.
So as you can see, it didn't take me long to do this table, and look at all the answers. I already have these answers. So, but you could type it up in Word and then probably just copy and paste over if you have these brackets already done over there. But the next thing is, obviously, you do have to come in here and start filling in your blanks, right, of their possible answers for that on there. So, but yeah, just to show you again, I did go in and I was underneath cell properties. Now I know there's an advanced tab. Oh, it looks like on here you could do a different style. Okay, so you've got different options. So they do have some nice border colors, background colors. It looks like you could come in. So you could come in and choose a background color, but I'm guessing for the color, you probably have to type in one of those hexadecimal numbers that corresponds to the color, is what I'm guessing, but I could be wrong, that are for that. But it looks like you do have some options where you can go in and do some different styles that they have on here. But while they did for the width and the height, they did theirs by percentages. And looks like they do have an option for a header cell. So for the ones that you have where you have your names into it, like I said, I was kind of just trying to figure out how do I get this, how do I get this so that my students can take this instead of the paper and pencil. And so I didn't really look into a ton of the features, but I did just look around like, okay, I needed to make my table fit a little bit better on here. How can I do that? And that's what I was finding out, is that you come in here and you type in the percentage, and then that seems to make the changes that you need on your table. Just try to make them a little bit nicer for that. So, oh, somebody's saying, yeah, it doesn't, yeah, somebody tried, they said it doesn't copy nice from Word from a table over. So I really do think you got to start with a table, but a lot of these features that they have, oh, it looks, and oh, here it is. So if you are, I know I've got one of my programming instructors on here. So I guess if you do know HTML, you could come in here and actually do everything right from here instead of touching everything individually, which I mean, I'm not a big programmer, but I can tell that these percentages are my widths. And if I want to change them quickly, I could just come in here and type those numbers quickly, and then I'll change those out as well for it. So, but yeah, it looks like you have a lot of options, just like you would, to be able to change your colors, change your alignment. You could add a numbered list, you could add a bulleted list, indents, things like that they have on there. Change your font size if you want to. And it does look like they do have some built-in features. So if I wanted to have these be considered headers up here, I could come in here and change this over to a, header 3. Things like that. So, all right. Questions on that? I'm going to update. Oh, I didn't add my, that's right. You got to add some answers on here. Luckily it tells you, please at least one non-blank answer for each variable. So if you can't save it until you've come in here and actually put in your answers. So it doesn't let you create a test with blank answers, which I guess is good, right? For that. I missed that one. So you would come down here, put in each of your answers. And I'm just picking ones that are already out there so I don't have to retype them. I'm pretty sure they're not right answers at this point. All right, and then I'm going to update my question that it has on there. And again, you can always come in as well. And a lot of times what I do, and you want to save it, and I'll then also preview it as well. So as I'm going through this, I do go through and I preview it because I want to know, hey, what does this look like to my students? So here's my quiz instructions, here's my questions, and then there's where those blanks are. So I think I told you the first time I copied this in, I actually was putting the blanks up here, and I don't know what I was thinking. And then and all of a sudden all these blanks are in the middle of my wording up here, and I'm like, oh yeah, the students are gonna have no clue. So I figured it out that, okay, I do my sentence, put in the blank, do my sentence, put in the bracket. So on there. And then here's that table. So you can see where I've got that I had put in the blanks for the tables for them to go in for that as well on there. Okay. All right. So once you have a quiz created out there, if you are going to use the lockdown browser, you have to have the quiz already created, and then you would come down on your once you're in your class under lockdown browser, you would go into, and it's going to show you all your quizzes that you have out here. So you can kind of see all my list of quizzes that I have, and it will tell you which ones are required. Okay. And so you can either have them do just the lockdown browser, or you can also combine it with the respondents monitor, and that's where they have to have a webcam. So keep that in mind. If you are going to require the students to do that, you need to let them know ahead of time that they're going to need to have a webcam in order to take your class out there for it. So you would go in and you would find the quiz that you just created. In this case, I just did this one. And I would just go in and do the drop down, choose settings. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to require the respondent. You can come in here and choose to put in a password again if you want to. And then I always open up these advanced settings. And this is where you can go in and choose some of your options that we have out there. Lock students into the browser until the exam is completed. I usually do that so that they aren't jumping out of the exam, right? Because the whole purpose is they shouldn't be taking that until they're ready to take it. Allowing the students to take this exam on an iPad, you definitely want to do that, but of course they're going to have to do the app to have that downloaded. Now, I do believe that Respondus does not work well. The lockdown browser does not work with Chrome. So that's the Chromebooks, I should say. So definitely students that have the Chromebooks, we found that we had some issues with that on it. Now, this one, allow access to specific external web domains. Because I used a software called TestOut to do a lot of my tests, I did turn this on for one of my tests, and that was so that they could go in and actually access TestOut.com. Now notice that you can go in there, it says separate them by commas. So I actually did have to work with TestOut and ask them for what are all the websites that when the students click to take a test, not just testout.com, because I know when they take a test, what do I need to put in here? And they gave me a list of the actual web addresses that they would need. But if you're having them maybe go read an article while they're taking a test, or they're reading an article and then they're going to come back and then respond to that article, then maybe you're going to allow them to get to that on there. And then are you going to allow them to use a calculator or enable printing? I normally don't turn those on because I don't want them to use a calculator, and I didn't want them to print because I didn't want them to print it out and have an access to that as well. And then down here would be whether or not you're going to require this webcam settings, okay? So the webcam settings is where is an add-on feature. The students do have to go in and use a webcam to record themselves during the exam. Okay, so for the question about the lockdown or the respondents, that is, yeah, a third party is the one who monitors them for that on there. We're not the ones that actually monitors them. It's a third party. It records them. And then they send you the recording and you're able to then go in and look at that if there's any question about the exam for that. Okay. So I have not used the monitoring, the webcam browser before, the respondents monitoring. This is a feature that KVCC does offer, but it does look like there's some options. Are you going to have them check for a student photo, show the ID, different things that you can come in and choose the startup sequence. So if this is something you do want to use, this is probably something you'll want to obviously test out ahead of time to make sure that it does work properly with the different items that you have out there.
I have used this and it works reasonably well, but I teach counting, so they are permitted to use a calculator, and sometimes they're going to need a piece of paper, and you can't see their hands to see if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and see their face at the same time. But it is very sensitive to the head position of the student. So even if someone bows their head looking down, and even though I can see their head, if they can't see the eyes, the system flags that as one of the items that you need to look at on the video.
Okay, yeah. I knew accounting was using it because Steve Wallman had shared some of his experiences with that as well. So, but, those are just, some of the options. Using that lockdown browser is really simple. Like I said, build your quiz, come out to lockdown browser, find your quiz, and then go in and choose your settings. So I think this is the TestOut one that I was doing for, yeah. So you can see on this one, because I was allowing them to, they had to go out and take a test, I had to go in and put multiple websites so that it would allow it. Otherwise, once you go into the lockdown browser, they would have been blocked. And we tested this. I tested it with the TestOut company, and I tested it myself so that I make sure that it actually went in and worked. But this is one of the tests that I did go in and do a lockdown browser for, using an external website for that on there. The only thing that you have to make sure that you do with this is, go to my quizzes. When you are using a TestOut, I did notice how I named it, and I said requires Respondus lockdown browser on here. So when you go into this, you have the quiz instructions. You have to put a link to go to that website so that they're not typing it in. And usually I put it as question number 1, and then they click on the link, and then it will go in and it will open up where they need to go to once they're inside the browser. I'm not inside the browser right now, but that's how it works. Is if you are going to go to an external website using the lockdown browser, you do need to, and I would do it, don't do it as your quiz instructions, do it as like question number 1, and say to take your test, click here, and then it bring them to the correct website from within inside the lockdown browser. And it worked good for me on there. But you're right. I mean, there's always going to be some things, is it the correct student? But I always put a time limit on my end. So I go in and I put a time limit so that, if they were trying to cheat, they didn't have it sitting open for 24 hours or whatever. So I do give them a time limit on my quizzes. So. All right. What is TestOut? TestOut is the curriculum that we actually use a lot of our CIS courses, and they offer the training that has simulations in it. So if you didn't have hardware, so we use it. They have the Office Pro, Desktop Pro, which are your Microsoft Office certifications. We use it, the PC Pro, and what it does is it goes in and it has a really nice curriculum package that talks about, has videos, and it has questions, and it also has simulations. And the simulations were very helpful for when we went to this totally online and no longer face-to-face. My students could actually still go in and practice on equipment. They just weren't on the real live equipment. They were in a simulated environment. All right. What other questions? I know we're getting near the end of our time here on that. So I still have not explored all the options that Canvas has either, but I've been very, very happy with trying to move a lot of my assignments over inside of Canvas, and just how easy it was, and just how I was able to really go in and control it. And like I said, this quiz that I went in and made this one, I was so excited for my students to be able to do that. And the students, it worked out good for them. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then I thank everybody for joining in. I believe we recorded this session, so this will be out there on the YouTube channel for the Faculty Success Center. And there are lots of videos. And like I said, when we were switching over so quickly, and I knew David and Molly were, they had a lot of questions, but they were great at just, David was sending me to the videos. I watched them, and I was able to go in and create that and get that lockdown browser to work for my students, just watching those videos.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
About the multiple choice questions.
Mhm.
So I like that to set up multiple choice questions where one of my options is A, C, and D, or like one of the options, it involves several of the, but not all of the above. And the only way I found it was to actually put the letter in my answer, because it doesn't automatically assign it A, B, C. So the only way was for me to, in the actual text of the answer, say A, this, B, this, and then further down the line say A and B, C and D, and then ask it not to shuffle the answer so that that could make sense. Is there a more elegant way to do it?
So yeah, because on multiple choice, it's just going to allow for just the one. I'm assuming you've done the multiple answers or multiple drop downs.
Yeah, not necessarily that I want more than one answer to be correct. It's just that one of my answers is A, B, and C. You know what I mean? Like they can choose that one as the correct answer, the one that says A, B, and C. It's just that when you're building your options, they don't get labeled. They don't get assigned a letter.
Oh, you're talking about for down here?
I
Well,
don't know what.
You should be able to, because this is where you do your
We can't see your screen.
Yeah, I can't see
Oh.
your screen. I thought I had somehow messed up the view, but because I could only see you.
So when you do your questions on here, and when you come in here, oh, because they should have where you can.
No, so what I do is you move down there where it says answers, right? And then like, so you can, put an
I did
option here,
multiple
then
drop
another
downs.
answer, and there another answer, right? That's how I.
Well, shouldn't you just use the
change-
multiple choice type and then it
Exactly. And then when you go down, you have correct answer 10, 12, 13, C, and then I want my numbers 5 option to be A and B. You know what I mean?
Oh,
or 1 and 4?
Well, then you would just put that as an answer in there and just say, you know, A or B.
Yeah.
That's, then you would just have to put it as one of the multiple choice options for that.
Doesn't that change?
I couldn't hear if somebody, I could,
If the program shuffles the answers and one is A and B, or 1 and 2, 1 and 2 may not always be left and right if the answers shuffle.
okay, well then you should be able to turn off not to shuffle your answers.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, is there a feature in here that gives students feedback? I don't necessarily mean grading feedback, but one of the things I've been doing in Moodle for the summer, since I never had to teach online before, one of the things that I did is on their multiple choice, if they chose the wrong answer, it gave them a feedback as to why that particular answer was wrong. And when they actually had to type in problems, after they worked the whole thing and submitted it, they've been able to go back and
Yep.
and
So
their
if you,
mistakes were.
yeah, so when you go in, you can put in comments down here where I'm pointing at right now, where it says, click to enter comments for correct answer, click to enter your comments for a wrong answer. So this is for your wrong answer. You would say, it can't be this because of blah, blah, blah. Or you would then, you have an option to put in general comments about that question for the students to see after that. So they do have that option to add your comments. And I think that's what you're asking about, Sherry?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've actually used, they have online as well as manual homework, and I've used the online homework with the option for them to repeat it more than once until they finally get it.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, so you do have the option to come in here and give feedback to them on here.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, back to Laura's question. Laura, maybe instead of using multiple choice, you should use multiple answer. And then don't have any, like have all possibilities, and then they can mark either one box or they can mark 2 or 3 boxes. So don't lump A and B together as a single answer. Just leave them as individual choices, and then set your test question as multiple answer format.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It'll show a checkbox next to each answer, and the student must select all the answers you mark as correct. So, yep, so that's a great option. Thanks, Allison. So,